Now, the third of our three expert speakers is Shara Evans. Shara is a technologist and a futurist. She fuses her engineering background with an understanding of how society is likely to respond to new technology. She's also founder and CEO of Market Clarity, an award-winning technology analyst firm, and a regular commentator on things such as AI. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shara Evans.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be part of the CPA Congress. Do you know, when it comes to AI, it is really hard to try to give you an overview in just 15 minutes or so. So what I'd like to do in my time today is demystify AI and show you some key applications that will impact all of us in the future. So AI is actually an umbrella term that encompasses a lot of different technologies, things like machine learning and deep learning, but also natural language recognition, emotion detection, image recognition, chatbots, smart robots, and a whole lot more. Many of you will think that AI sounds very futuristic, but you may be surprised to learn that work on AI actually started all the way back in 1956. Early researchers looked at a number of different ways to build artificial intelligence, but the way that they settled on back then was trying to take the decision trees that human experts use to make decisions and hard code them into a software program, into an artificial intelligence piece of software. That changed in the 1980s, and that's when we really started to see AI become very widespread. That is the beginning of the machine learning era. The thing that's different about machine learning is rather than hard coding things directly into AI, what you're doing is training an AI based on inputs, data. Now, with machine learning, it still requires human intervention to be able to do this kind of training. For instance, if I wanted to train an AI to recognize a stop sign, I would be programming in the borders of the stop sign and the fact that it's red. In the early machine learning era, we started to see things like spam filters become very prevalent in society, being able to do predictive type of analysis. One of the big breakthroughs in the early machine learning era happened in 1997 when IBM Big Blue won the chess match from Garry Kasparov, the reigning chess champion. Things started to get really exciting, though, in 2010, and that is the era where we started to get into this whole deep learning space. Now, the difference between deep learning and machine learning is that with deep learning, the AI starts to train itself. The way that you train it is by throwing lots and lots of big data at it. And it's because of this data explosion that we have that we're starting to move into this era. One of the early milestones in the deep learning era happened in 2011 when IBM Watson won the Jeopardy game. It used a combination of learning lots of information, trivia, really, to win the game, as well as natural language processing to be able to compete with the other contestants. Now, things really hotted up, however, in 2015. In 2015, researchers discovered that by using specialized chips to do parallel processing, and specifically for graphics, as well as having this explosion of big data, the machines were able to start learning at a much, much faster rate than ever before. In 2016, we saw another breakthrough that was thought to be one of the pinnacles of AI learning, and that is when Google's DeepMind started to learn how to play Go and actually won 4 out of 5 games against a master champion. Artificial intelligence is already big business. In 2016, it was estimated that the business was worth between 1.4 and 8 billion US dollars. By 2020, IDC estimates that this will be worth 47 billion US dollars. And by 2025, the market is expected to be at least 60 billion, according to Tractica. I actually think that that's a bit conservative and that it will be worth a whole lot more. One of the areas that will impact many of you in this room is a subset of AI called robotic process automation. And with RPA, what we're talking about is being able to replicate anything that a human being can do with a keyboard or a mouse, whether that be opening, reading emails and attachments, copying things to and from databases, scraping data from the web, monitoring social media trends, doing calculations, anything that you can imagine. In the finance world, what this translates to is being able to do things like general journal ledger entries, being able to reconcile journal accounts, being able to audit expense reports. In a recent report that I read from Deloitte, they estimated that RPA can be 15 times more efficient than a human is at these repetitive tasks. And depending on the function in which it's deployed, the savings can be as high as 90%. So what this means for people who are involved in doing these types of repetitive tasks is that you will need to start thinking about value add. How can you take this data that you have and use artificial intelligence as an assistant to help you derive customer insights and market insights that you can provide to your customers and become a trusted advisor? It's a shift in the kinds of things that many people will be doing. And this will impact a lot of different industries. Another example is out of the legal industry. And this particular picture is a snapshot from a Kira due diligence engine. And it's used in mergers and acquisitions. And what Kira does is that she is able to find particular clauses like assignment or bankruptcy or termination and identify them across hundreds or thousands of different documents very, very quickly and highlight them so that a human can double check things and to see what is in tune with corporate guidelines or what may be out of bounds. Another example in the legal industry comes out of the UK from a bankruptcy firm. In the UK, Ross is being used to go through the thousands and thousands of documents that lead up to a bankruptcy and distill things to the nit of why it believes the bankruptcy occurred, then take this information and hand it off to the specialized lawyers who can then go back and examine the specific documents. It cuts the time of this process down from months to perhaps days. In another report that I recently read from Deloitte, they estimate that in the legal field, up to 39% of jobs, particularly paralegals, will be impacted by this type of robotic process automation. And it's also being used in the world of creativity. You wouldn't normally think of AI in the creative arts. Well, there's a lingerie company called Casabella, and they were getting a little bit frustrated with their digital advertising company. They weren't getting the return on investment that they were hoping for. So what they decided to do was use a brand new AI called Albert and have Albert help them decide what to put in their digital advertising. Within a very short time period, Albert found that ads that actually had pictures of people performed 50% better than ads that did not. And Albert then started to decide what ads and copy to put in different places that they were advertising, like Facebook, for example. So the actual assets, the artwork, was designed by humans, but Albert was making the decisions about where to place ads and which ads to use. In the space of about 6 months, they tripled their ROI in advertising investment, and they grew their customer base by 30%. Another really interesting aspect of artificial intelligence is image recognition. And this example comes from a government department right here in Australia, from PSMA. So for those of you who don't know PSMA, this is the department that has the geocoded address database for all of Australia. It's got the property boundaries, the cadastral boundaries, the zoning laws. A couple of years ago, they started to undertake a project called Geoscape. And what they wanted to do was use a combination of artificial intelligence, satellite imagery, and analytics to build up a 3D model of the built environment all the way across the entire nation. A hugely ambitious project that is actually live in a whole range of capital cities and regional areas right now. One of the early tests that they did was in Adelaide, where they decided to look at properties that had swimming pools. Initially, when the AI identified these properties, it was about 80% accurate in correctly picking out a pool versus something that may have been a building with a blue tarp. So what they did was they crowdsourced people to look at the images that the AI picked out as having a pool to verify, yes, no, is this or isn't a pool. So they used this combination of people and deep learning to start training the database to teach itself on different characteristics of properties. Now imagine what you can do with this kind of imagery and knowledge. Imagine that you can query nationwide every building that's over 50 meters in height. Imagine that you're in the real estate or insurance industry and you have all of this important information about the built environment. Or in emergency services, you now know where the buildings and the roads and the vegetation is. Or telecommunications. The way that you would actually make the best use of this data is to mash it with other big data. And this is just one example of image recognition. We also go into things like facial detection and emotion detection as well. Speech recognition is another huge area of artificial intelligence that is really starting to come into its own right now. How many of you on your smartphones use an application like Siri or Google or Cortana? Just raise your hand. Anybody? A few of you, right? How many of you have home assistants like Amazon Echo or Google Home? Anybody? Raise your hands. Couple out there. Well, voice recognition is starting to be interwoven into a lot of different things. I was at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas in January, and Amazon Alexa was integrated into everything from cars to washing machines to all sorts of home appliances. There were even little robots for sale for 2-year-olds that had voice recognition where they were connected to the web. Kids would talk to the robot and the robot will talk back to the kid. In about 3 years' time, it's going to be very common for us to be talking to appliances, talking to our cars, and kids are going to grow up talking to robots. But the thing is, when you have voice recognition, the way that the device or the software knows that you want to do something is you use a keyword like, hey, Alexa, or okay, Google, or something else. And that means that this device is always listening, and in many cases, always recording conversations. And that way it builds up a whole repertoire of knowledge about you that you can use as your digital assistant. But imagine that you've got these same devices, though, in your company, and they're always listening and they're always recording. There are some implications from a company perspective too, because you don't know who's got a smartphone in their handbag, their briefcase, their pocket, and it's always listening because it's got a digital assistant on it, but it's recording your board meeting too, and maybe that data is being sold elsewhere. I'd love to show you a little bit about just how advanced voice recognition is getting, and robots too. This is a little clip from Jimmy Fallon and The Tonight Show, and the android is Sophia from Hanson Robotics.
Hi, Sophia.
Have a look.
Hello, Jimmy.
Oh, my God. Do you know where you are?
Of course. I'm in New York City, and I'm on my favorite show, The Tonight Show.
Sophia, can you tell me a joke?
Sure. What cheese can never be yours?
What cheese can never be mine? I don't know.
Nacho cheese.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's not. I like nacho cheese.
Nacho cheeses. Ew.
Gosh, you did. Ew.
I'm getting laughs.
Yeah.
Maybe I should host the show.
In about 3 years' time, natural language voice recognition is going to get so close to being accurate that we'll take it for granted. So when it comes to AI, one of the things that many people don't talk about is the fact that as these neural networks that we're building get bigger and bigger and bigger, we don't always understand from a research perspective how an AI is making a decision. So you've got all this data that you're throwing at it and you're teaching it with data, but then sometimes the AI does very unexpected things. One example that was published recently by OpenAI was an experiment they did where they had an AI that was using deep learning techniques to teach itself a video boat racing game. The objective of this game was twofold. One, to cross the finish line, but secondly, to do it with the most number of points. And the way that you got points was these green widgets pop up, and then you catch the widget, and you're supposed to just go over the finish line once you catch a certain amount. Well, the AI got absolutely obsessed on getting widgets, and it never bothered to cross the finish line. So it was going around in circles, it was crashing into other boats, it was crashing into the wall. It was doing everything except crossing the finish line. One of the things that the researchers determined is that in training AIs, we actually need to put in loops for reinforcement learning because frankly, right now, I reckon AIs are about a 2-year-old level. And one of the other things that they determined was that not only do we need to put in loops for reinforcement learning, that actually needs to be done by humans. We need to teach AIs to actually be good AIs and raise them in a way that we want them to be raised. And not only that, but we need to get a better understanding of what's happening in these neural networks, and in particular, be responsible for the outputs that come out the other end, because it's a little bit of a black box in the middle. There will be a lot of new jobs of the future that involve AI training and robot training. Along with that will be new jobs that also train AIs and robots to be more human-like. And here I'm talking about the heart space that we all care about, to be able to express things like emotion and listening and feeling and compassion. Today, we already have AIs that are able to read our facial expressions to pick up emotions. We have AIs today that are already able to pick up from the tone of our voice and the words that we use and the cadence of our words, our emotions, just based on our voice. We will have whole new jobs of people that literally get involved with raising AIs to be good AIs. So when it comes to the future, how smart can AIs get? Well, according to AI researchers, there is no upper limit that they will put on it. Think about that for a moment. No upper limit. There was a research conference early this year where AI researchers were asked to vote on when they thought that AI would gain human-level intelligence. Half of the researchers thought it would happen between 2040 and 2050. 95% of them thought that it would happen by 2075. We want to make sure we're raising good AIs that live alongside of us and behave responsibly. I hope you've enjoyed this little mini tour of the world of artificial intelligence. Thank you.